Welcome to our report out. We've got quite a bit today, which is good. First of all, though, it's my great pleasure to do the candidate certification for Lean for Leaders. So I've got a certificate for you here, Sophie, so well done. Come out. Well done. And I think just to say how fantastic it is that you've done this, and in common with many other colleagues that have done Lean for Leaders, which is itself a demanding, time-consuming, stressful experience, but really worthwhile in terms of what you get out of it from the point of view of implementing the improvement work. And the fact that you've come through quite a really steep but impressive development pathway, all the more reason to be proud of that, so really well done.
Thanks very much, I am very proud. Thank you to the KPL team as well, Helen, Jimmy and Chris for their support.
Great.
And for you, Julie.
Great, no, pleasure, well done. Well done. Excellent. Okay, our next item is a presentation on 2-week wait suspected cancer referral process, looking at quality improvement, and we've got Robert. Is Robert with us? Excellent. Robert, do you want to come? Robert Easton, do you want to come and take the stage and report out?
Hello everyone. My name is Rob Easton. My role for the last 9 months has been Clinical Leadership Fellow in Cancer Services. So basically most of the work I've been doing has been with the cancer teams both here at the hospital and also the CCG, so primary care. And before that, basically the reason for my primary care involvement is because before that I was a final year GP trainee, so that's basically my background. And I'd like to tell you a bit more about the quality improvement project I've been leading on this year, which is related to the 2-week wait suspected cancer pathway. So, just a bit of background to that. So, a year ago, nearly half of all confirmed cancer diagnoses were originally referred on the 2-week wait pathway. So, it's an incredibly important pathway, probably the most important pathway as a GP that you can refer a patient on for obvious reasons. And it accounted for over 25,000. Now, actually, that's out of date because last night I got some new data through showing that actually that's gone up to over 30,000 referrals now, just in a 1 year period from primary care to here. So it's an awful lot of referrals that are originating from primary care. Now, most of these referrals should be sent, well, all of them should be sent electronically, but it turns out that quite a lot of it's still being sent by fax, amazingly, and also there is concern, and this is really why I was originally what started me off on this project, because I was told about concerns that have been coming in from practices about referrals just going astray, they're being delayed, missed entirely in some cases, and we didn't really know why. So my first job was to try and find out why. And we set out with the original aim of trying to create a standard for the process that reduced the number of delayed referrals, but also increased compliance with referrals guidance. So in order to try and do that, so that in the planning phase, there were certain things we needed to know. So first of all, we needed to obviously analyse any variation that may exist in referral processes between different practices. We also needed to understand whether or not that variation, if indeed it does exist, impacts on patient care. Also to talk to practices, talk to the staff there and try and establish whether they have any concerns regarding the process. And then use the lessons learned from that to try and create a leaner, more robust process that's better for patients because they get seen at the right place at the right time. And also that's safer because the referrals get to the place where they should be at the right time as well. So I went around 11 Leeds practices, this is at the start of the year, trying to find out a bit more about the processes that they use. The clinical systems that they use, so that, as you may or may not be aware, there are basically 2 IT systems that we use in GP land. One is called System 1, which I'm sure most of you will have heard of. The other is called EMIS. The EMIS on the national stage is actually bigger, but in Leeds, most of us use System 1. So about 3/4 of practices in Leeds use System 1. And I used both quantitative and qualitative approaches to do a bit of research. So going to the quantitative bit, all I did was basically go around practices armed with my iPhone and videoed a designated member of staff doing the referral process right from the beginning to sending it into secondary care. So I asked who that would normally be, whether it would be a secretary or a clinician Most of the time, it won't surprise you maybe, it was a secretary that was doing that. So it would be a secretary that I would film doing the process from beginning to end. Then I just made a process map. Now, out of the 11 practices, every single one did it in a different way. So you would think just accessing a Word referral form, filling it in and sending it off, there wouldn't be that much variation. There was a heck of a lot of variation, ranging from 0 handovers to 5 handovers. So it really was remarkable the amount of variation we found. But from those 11 practices, I did find some commonality. So we did do a process map. And basically, there are 3 steps. First of all, there's accessing and completing the form, the Word referral form. There's sending a task, an electronic task to a secretary. And there's also sending the form either by email or to using the choose and book method to send the referral. So there's a huge range in the number of clicks it took to just access the forms and then send them off. So ranging from 16 to 58, which is a heck of a lot really when you think all you're doing is just accessing a Word form and saving it and hitting go. It's remarkable. And then there's a huge amount of variation in the amount of time as well. So 2.5 minutes might not seem that much, but remember, this is not actually writing the referral letter or clicking all the boxes that you need to click. This is just accessing the form and saving it and sending it. So in the context of a 10-minute GP consultation, that's pretty rubbish. By far and away, the most important information I got there was just by talking to people. So 8 of the 11 practices I went to had recent delayed referrals due to process failures. And this was by far and away the most common reason for this, was because when a GP or clinician, ANP, whoever was doing the referral, sent a task to a secretary, they would fail to specify the urgency and the due date of that task. So it could be sitting in a secretary's inbox for days, weeks, and in one occasion, it just got entirely missed. So that is a patient safety issue. Also, 7 of the practices have recently sent faxes to the referral and booking service. GPs regard filling in these forms as time-consuming and just overly complicated, so that was one of the main findings as well. And handover issues, as I've already said, were the main problem when it came to introducing a delay into the referral process. So, just to illustrate why it's so rubbish and why GPs choose not to do it, but just to send it to a secretary, this is system 1. This is a dialog box that it throws up when you try and access the Word referral form. And it asks for loads of information like a read code, a recipient, and then you have to click on this box down here to search for your template. Your template might be up in the cloud, it might be on your local systems, who knows where the hell it is. But that's what you have to do. And this is all completely unnecessary steps. So this information is essentially garbage information, which doesn't add any value to the referral process itself at all. And then if you can be bothered to do all that, you eventually get to the referral form. And the referral form itself can be quite complicated to fill in the short space of time we've got, because it's a Word referral form. It's digital paper, which we are basically bolting on to what is essentially a good IT system, but we're still using digital paper to do this. So there's all your patient demographics there. Some practices have got this nailed down and they'll just use mail merge fields to do that. Others, there was one practice where they were manually inputting every single mail merge item for every single referral, which I thought was interesting. And then you've got things like, so urology, for example, you've got the blood results. Now, in order to access the blood results, you might have to go out of the referral letter, you might have to go into the pathology, and then you might have to go back in again. It can be a real faff to do that. So, what most GPs are deciding to do is not to bother. So they're just firing off a task, and the bit of the task screen there that's outlined in red is the most important bit, because that's where it shows you the urgency and the due date. And if they're not specified, because you might be busy in a rush, something might happen, your phone might ring, you just forget to do that, then it can introduce a delay to the process. So what we tried to do, armed with this information, is come up with a new standard for the referral process, which is initially for System 1 users, because they're the majority in Leeds. So we've got cloud-based forms, which are electronic forms native to System 1, so the clinicians don't actually have to interact with the Word forms at all. They're centrally updated, so if there's a change to the NICE guidelines, as there fairly recently has been to the NG12 cancer guidelines, they can be done centrally without practices having to download forms, because often they just don't, and you end up using the old forms for a long time. They're quick and easy to complete, even on the oldest, rubbishest machines, which a lot of us have. The forms remind clinicians if any of the core clinical information is incomplete, That's a really important bit because most forms that are arriving in secondary care at the moment are not complete, and that can introduce another delay, or it can mean that patients are sent to clinic where they shouldn't be, where they should be going straight to test. So there's lots of reasons why these forms need to be filled in correctly. Crucially, the system that we've developed has automatic specification of the task attributes. So if the clinician does decide they want to send a task for whatever reason, the due date and the urgency are automatically specified by the system. And hopefully what we're finding at the moment is that the new system is acceptable to clinical staff and administrative staff as well. So this is more or less what we've got running at the moment. So we piloted it first in one practice in Manor Park practice, and now we've got it running in 6 practices. We're doing a phased rollout with the aim of having this installed in every System 1 practice by about the end of September time. So this is a template. It's all everything that you can see on here is based in the cloud. So no forms are based on local machines. You've got all these specialties, your 2-week wait specialties there. So all the clinician has to do is click on the appropriate button. So that's for so if we say urology as an example, and then they get an electronic questionnaire. Now this is built into System 1, so we haven't had to create any new software there. All we've done is we've created a questionnaire which mimics the questions on the 2-week wait referral form. So all you do is you click your radio buttons. Now the advantage of this approach is that you can't save the questionnaire without actually putting all the information that the word referral forms requires. So it makes it impossible, a bit like when you fill in a form to book an airline ticket, you can't do it incorrectly, the system won't allow you to do it. So this allows us to basically use that approach. If they want to put in a referral letter, they can, although actually, you know what, the clinicians here are not that bothered about a referral letter. They're much more interested in the actual radio buttons. That's what they're telling me anyway in the cancer team. So hopefully this will make sure that that is done right every single time. So then, having done that, and that can take seconds if you know the answers to the questions, you go back to your template and you can either send a task to the secretary to complete the process, you can print a leaflet, because we know that clinicians weren't printing leaflets before because they were the 3rd page of the referral letter, so they have to load it up and then chop it off somehow, and it's all really stupidly difficult. But anyway, we've tried to make that a lot easier. So if they choose to send the task to the secretary, then what the secretary will then do, or the clinician can do that's what I'm encouraging all people to do, because then you've got 0 handovers, which is the ideal approach, is just simply click on the appropriate button for your specialty. So if you want to send an email to the referral and booking service, you'd click this button here, or if you want to send a choose and book referral, you click that button there. And essentially they both do the same thing. They both just automatically generate the final word referral form, filling in, using the answers that the clinician has put into the questionnaire. So it sucks up those answers and then spits them out into the referral form. And that's an example of a completed urology referral form. So rather than a tick in the blue box questions, you've got a yes or a no. That's essentially the only difference. The formatting, everything else is exactly the same. It automatically sucks up the blood results using read codes from the system, so there's no need for clinicians to actually look at the blood results at all, because they'll automatically be sucked up. And it basically answers all the questions that are necessary on the form. So that's an example. So that's the pilot practice. So the baseline period of 15 weeks before the red line, which is when we introduce the new system, is how many forms were completed correctly. And so 44% is not fantastic for the baseline period, but that's broadly representative of every practice in Leeds. So when RBS, Referral and Booking Service, did a similar audit, they used slightly different criteria, more generous than I did, but they still only got to 50%. So that's for every practice in Leeds. And that's for, I think that was about over 1,000 referrals, so it's pretty a good sample. After introduction of the new system, we only had 1 referral that was not completed correctly, and that's because the clinician had clicked the wrong button. And the secretary had got so used to the referrals being completed correctly every time that they simply didn't bother looking at it. So we introduced the second PDSA cycle. We introduced some new warnings so that doctors wouldn't do that in future, and there's never been an example of that happening since. So hopefully we've mitigated against that. If you look at the blue box actions, and this is quite important because this is what representative of what the doctor is actually doing in the consultation. So are they actually talking to people about the fact that this is a suspected cancer referral? Because often what clinicians here were telling me is that people would be arriving at clinic and the C word will be mentioned, and then it's like, what? I was never told it could be cancer. And so it's a complete shock to them when they come here. So what are we actually doing in primary care land? So this is we can get a good measure of this from the new system as to whether there's been any improvement. Are they giving a leaflet to patients when they're in the appointment? And are they checking their 14-day availability? Because you would be amazed by the number of people I have seen personally who, when you want to send them on a 2-week pathway, they say, well, hang on, I've got to go to Mallorca next week, and regardless of the seriousness of the appointment, I'm not going to be referred until I get back. So it's actually very important for this to be recorded correctly. So this is what happened after introduction to the system. Leaflets were hardly ever given before, but now we're doing better. We're still not up to where I'd like to be, which is all the time, but we're still doing a heck of a lot better than before. But crucially, the discussions with the patients are being had a lot more, at least on paper they are anyway. So it's difficult to say, you know, it may be that they were having had more before the system, but it just wasn't recorded. But regardless, this is what is, you know, recorded, which, you know, if it's not recorded, it didn't happen, did it? So that's what's being recorded. So in terms of the future, we're doing a rollout at the moment. So the initial plan was to roll out to 6 practices in the phased rollout, so we're now at 7. And with a plan to blanket rollout later on in the year. So I'm hoping about September time, because I go back into clinical practice in October. I'm hoping by then we can have a blanket rollout to all System 1 practices in Leeds. This will be endorsed by the CCG and also Leeds Integrated Cancer Services here as the preferred method for doing a 2-week wait referral. And I'm trying to engage with EMIS as much as I can at the moment to get this approach ported across to the EMIS platform. Because really, if we can do this, you know, at a local level, I don't see why. There's no reason why it couldn't be scaled up and potentially be a regional or even national process. Because looking at the processes that are used in other cities like London, for example, they're remarkably similar to what we had been using prior to doing it this way. So that's that. Oh, and for anybody who's interested in the geeks in here, we're interested in the time, because I'm a bit geeky. So in terms of the time to do the loading up the form, save it, and then send it, so that the average was 96 seconds before. We've got that down to 32 seconds now, and that can be equated in a year to over 500 hours of clinical time. So even a minute is a lot in terms of, you know, the amount of time we can still spend with the patient, especially in the context of the primary care consultation. So that's it.
Great.
Thank you
very much. Thanks very much, Rob. We've got time at the end for questions, so we'll move straight on to the next report out, which is from Value Stream 4. RPIW1, first nurse review, and we've got Kath.
Yeah.
Kath, over to you. And your team. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Kath Walters. I'm Senior Assistant of the Eye Clinic and Process Owner for this value stream. And it represents the patient's journey through the first nurse review. We have over 200 patients a day coming through our clinic, and everyone has a first nurse review where we check patients' vision and put eye drops in ready for them to see the consultant. During our processes, we have managed to reduce our staff walking distance by 17%. We made subtle changes to our working practices to reduce the waste in our processes and the wait times for the patients and consultants. So by having the instructions written in the notes by the doctors means that we don't have to keep interrupting that process to go and ask, does this patient need dilating, because all the information is already there. We had the lead time has been reduced by 57%. Because again, of a change of practice of the setup of our clinics in the morning. So now we make sure that the rooms are ready for the first patients, so that we've got all the equipment to hand that we need. Again, reducing having to come out and come back in with the right equipment to continue. And the working process and the standard working processes, we have actually, it's remained the same at 15, which was our baseline, and at the moment our baseline for the SWIP is 5. We have managed now to reduce this to 2. We need to spend more time working on our quality defects, because some of the times that the patients are interrupted during their first nurse review is by other colleagues coming in asking if we have the keys to go and get the drugs out of the cupboard and the prescriptions and things. So one of the ways that we thought that we may be able to get around that was to move some of our cupboards to a different location where there wouldn't be interruptions.
Some of the quality defects, this is the number of times the nurses were interrupted or had to leave the room for equipment. That's been reduced by 66% since we started. That's because, as Kath said, cupboards have been moved, so we wouldn't have many interruptions. The number of times patients are asking for information about waiting times has been reduced by 34%. Part of this has been achieved by giving the patient more information during the first review. Also telling the patient what the process of their visit will follow. For example, you will be seen next by the photographer who will pass your notes to the consultant you will be seeing today.
Hi, I'm Simon Kolb. I'm one of the consultants in the eye clinic and a team member of the RPIW. So at the start of the process, I commented that sometimes in clinic I can be waiting about 45 minutes to actually see my first patients, which adds a big delay and a big backlog of patients when you've got to fit them all in that clinic slot. So I'm often playing catch up, trying to see all the patients within the same time frame. But since we've started the RPIW and implemented these changes, my clinics have been drastically different. I start on time and I finish on time, and the patients aren't waiting anymore to see me in my clinic. And we've rolled these changes out across the clinic, and other consultants are commenting positively on the changes that we've done. So you can see some big changes there in the setup time, so things in clinic are now starting properly with all the equipment ready for the first nurse review. The quality defects have reduced, and that's in part due to things like moving the cupboards so nurses aren't interrupted. We've also implemented other standard things like Kanban cards for restocking, and those are out in use at the moment, and I've had positive comments about those. So clinicians aren't having to go and interrupt nursing staff whilst they're doing their first nurse review, delaying the pathway of the patient through to the clinic. We've implemented other things as well, so information to patients so they don't need to ask as many questions about delays, and just so they're set up a bit better with the knowledge of how the clinic works. We've reworded the clinic letters, so instead of appointment times, they're arrival times, just to better set the patient's expectations of what happens in clinic so they're not asking about delays. We're using visual cues on the clinic whiteboards in the rooms, so in the clinic waiting area, so that any delays on clinic, the clinician can go and write that down, so the patients will have a visual cue as to how long they might be having to wait, and that, I think, has reduced the amount of times that the patients go and interrupt the nursing staff to ask about delays. And moving forward, we're looking at I think we have another RPIW looking at the administrative side to get some further improvements into clinic. And hopefully in the future we might even be able to go paperless with a system to sort of a computerized system to let the nursing staff and our photographers know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. And if we remove the notes from the system, then that will further speed up the patient flow through clinic.
Due to staffing issues, we have been unable to make the progress that we would have liked, but we are confident that by 120 days this will have decreased further. And the main challenges and frustrations have been around getting estates response times to come and actually move our cupboards, and waiting for the print unit to actually print us Kanban cards. And I've learned one lesson from that is that I need to escalate if we're having difficulties. And we are currently at level 2 and are well on our way to level 3. So the Kanban cards in the rooms are working, and we have some visual prompts in place, but there's still a little more further work that we need to do around that.
Right. Well done. I'm really good progress, and I'm sure 120 days have seen further progress, but I think you should be really pleased with where we got to, and obviously in terms of the point about escalating with colleagues in other departments, I'm sure we can find some ways of overcoming obstacles collectively on that. So great. I'll hold questions for you until we've done the next one, and then we'll gather them all up. Okay, great. So moving on, we've got value stream 5, RPIW 1, which has been going on this week, Hannah?
It has indeed.
Excellent. So we've got Bev and Adam and the team, yeah? Great. To talk about your work over the course of this week. So Bev.
And we just wanted Jen, because it's the first time this value stream's reported out, just
Great.
to share some information
Excellent.
with the audience about what we're up to.
That's great. Jenny, yeah, smashing.
Hello, my name's Jenny Earhart. So this is our value stream map, value stream 5. It's all about time to first consultant admission on the acute floor, which is one of the 7-day services standards that we've agreed to meet. And our current state is that despite all the hard work of the staff on that floor, we don't meet that for the majority of our patients. So the future state describes an aspiration to exceed that and actually to have a first consultant review right up at the front end when patients first come through. My understanding is the exec sponsor is only contacted during an RPIW week if something has really gone wrong. So I'm dead chuffed that I don't know what to do. So over to you.
Thanks very much, Jenny. Hello, my name is Jimmy Carvin. I'm a Kaizen Promotion Office Specialist, and I've been the workshop lead, the privilege of workshop lead for this RPIW, which is on the acute floor, as you've heard, and the process we've been looking at is the medical clerking process. So during our observations, we identified lots of variation and waste in the process, and the team saw how this waste took them away from completing tasks that really add value from the perspective of a patient and really increase their burden of work. And you're going to hear from the team now about how they use the lean principles within the Leeds improvement method, such as 5S, mistake proofing, visual management, to deliver some significant improvements for their patients and to reduce their burden of work.
Hello, my name is Helen Gilbert. I'm the Kaizen Promotion Office lead, but it's lovely not being in charge this week. I've been under Jimmy's leadership this week, which has been great. It's really important that we measure the success of our work, and what you will see here is where we started in terms of our baseline data. We've been measuring, we always measure the lead time of a process. How long does it take to carry out the medical clerking process to safely admit a patient onto our wards? We also have been looking at quality and the defects in our work, and again an interesting common theme emerging from a lot of our rapid process improvement workshops, but the number of times patients aren't ready for this particular process, and also the number of times our hard-working staff are interrupted in the course of their day-to-day work. And we've been looking at the productivity for our advanced clinical practitioners and our doctors in training in terms of how much of their time they spend on this particular process. And always in terms of the discipline we want to bring to our work environment, our 5S goals are around the ops room, which is where all this work takes place across ward 27 and 29 on the acute floor. It's really important that we focus on the demand of our work. It's a core component part of the Leeds improvement method. And so we have a concept called tack time, which is what is the pace of the demand coming up onto these ward areas. On ward 27, they have on average 19 patients a day. That's a patient every 76 minutes appearing in that ward area. And on ward 29, a demand of 14 patients a day, which is a patient appearing every 103 minutes.
Hello, my name's Bev, and I'm a matron in acute medicine, and I'm a co-process owner for this improvement work. So I think it's fair to say that initially I had quite a few reservations about this work, which I did vocalise. And I think that's because it's new and it's about my lack of understanding about what was ahead of me. But in the build-up to this week, we had meetings with the KPO team, and they helped to increase my understanding of the process. And they also provided lots of data and pictures of our areas, which actually make you stop and look at what you do every day. So in relation to the pictures, when I saw them, it just screamed chaos. And if it screams chaos at me, it screams chaos at patients and relatives when they arrive on the ward. And I think for me, you're there every day, but you don't see it because you're there every day. In relation to the data, the interruptions was a biggie for me. So realising that our medical clerking doctors are interrupted on average of once every 8 minutes during the clerking process, which then leads to the increase to make mistakes and to go over information repeatedly. This week we've produced some flow charts to identify waste and duplication, and the KP officers described to me something about human potential waste, which I'd never heard of. And that's related to the surveys that we'd done before this work and the reaction from the junior doctors within our teams. And they described feeling a perception of being disengaged and not able to affect what happened. And I find that really sad because everyone should be able to impact on what happens. So we have to do something about that. And then the duplication was the big thing for me, that we ask questions, the same question 2, 3 and 4 times. And so if I were patients out there, I'd be thinking, do these guys not talk to each other? And I'd probably lose some trust in what they were doing. Personally, I've learnt lots. I've learnt what a mental valley is, and that I have several of them. Maybe not as many as I had on Monday, but that's a work in progress. I think the challenges that I found was keeping focus this week and keeping in the scope of what we were set to do and not trying to fix the whole thing in 1 week or 2 days. And then the realisation for the group, I think really, that if we make the small changes and we embed them and sustain them, then it'll give us a foundation to build and create a first-class service for our patients and for our staff. Victoria.
Thank you. My name's Victoria Watts. I'm a geriatrician on the acute floor and I've been a member of the team this week. So as we heard from Bev, there's often at times an air of confusion and chaos on the acute floor. And we think to help remove this, we ought to organise the ward better at the start of the day. So our first step has been to produce this staffing board. Currently doctors arrive on the ward at 9 o'clock, and this is where the chaos starts, with doctors trying to decide where they should be and what they should be doing. To overcome this board is an easy visual description listing the roles and responsibilities of each member of the nursing team and the medical team. Nurses have been using this successfully for a long time, and now we're going to roll it out to the medical staff. So if we look at the picture, you can see how the ward is divided into 3 team areas, depicted by different colours. Each area now has a nursing member of staff assigned to that area, along with the medic, and we've also added onto the bottom the different teams coming onto the ward, such as EDATs and pharmacists. So this should enable doctors and nurses to communicate much better with each other, and thereby reducing the unnecessary interruptions that we've been hearing about. Using this approach has also enabled us to free up one member of the doctor's team and now protects them into a clerking and assessment role. So we removed all the interruptions from that member of the team, making the clerking process much smoother and much better for the patient and the member of staff. The other part of our work has been to produce a production board. Currently, information regarding flow across the CSU is gathered and held by matrons and flow managers, but it isn't communicated very well to the people on the shop floor, and it's the people on the shop floor who are best placed to make changes and help with patient flow. So this board is going to show the health of the staffing and also the health of the CSU, and it will be updated by patient flow at 4 times throughout the day. Starting at the top of the board, we're showing the activity in the previous 24 hours, and this will give us an idea of how busy we're likely to be in the next 24 hours. We're then moving on to the staffing, and we've developed a RAG rating for the staffing for both nursing and medical. And feeding into this rating, we've got both the numbers of the staff that are on the ward, but also the types of patients that are on the ward and the number of patients that we're expecting. Again, this will be updated throughout the day, and the staff on the ward will feed into this rating to reflect how they feel the ward is flowing at any point in time. At the bottom, we've included information about the CSU. We've included this to enable staff at a local level to begin to plan and respond to the bigger picture across the CSU in a much more timely manner.
Thanks, Victoria. My name's Jen. I'm one of the trainee advanced clinical practitioners working in acute medicine, and I've been a team member during this improvement week. Following on from what Victoria said about identifying who's responsible for what we also wanted to do was help direct people towards the tasks that they had to get done throughout the day. and that's so that you don't have a free-for-all and everyone wanting the same notes and also the same patients at the same time. Using a priority list that was already quite embedded on a ward to identify which patients were the priority for the consultant ward round in a morning, what we've done is communicated with our pharmacists and EDAP teams as well as our nursing teams that any patients that feature on this priority list for this morning should have a protected time until the consultant ward round has taken place, and that's including protecting those notes for that period of time. We communicate that those notes are now available to the wider team by ticking them off the list, and we automatically divert flow to different patients throughout the morning by doing this. One of the biggest issues was finding medical notes on a ward, as there's many places and many homes for them once somebody's picked them up. So using Kanban cards that are colour-coded, I know the responsibility of the person removing the notes to put in the notes trolley, we can identify very quickly and without interrupting our colleagues to find out where those notes are. This method has already been adopted by some teams on some of the wards, and what we hope is by coordinating it and making it consistent, we can get some concordance from our colleagues in using the process. Following on from one of the things that's been identified by our observation team is about taking medication history from our patients. And whilst we've identified there's a lot of duplication in that process, we've identified that it's quite a complex issue in itself and is probably a whole other project that we haven't been able to completely address in this week. What we have seen is that taking medication history from patients is largely populated from a pre-existing list on a server that we have, PPM, and not a lot of time is spent with the patient to actually find out that information. What we want to do is streamline that process and reduce the chance for errors, and a simple form would be to print the list that's pre-existing on the PPM server. Unfortunately, there is a button for that, but at the moment that button to print is not activated, and that's one of the things we would like to ask for some help with, is making that a priority for PPM to resolve for us. Short term, we have come up with a fix this week, and that is to print screen that page and to attach it into the medical booklet, and therefore allowing our clinicians to actually spend time with the patient to confirm that list rather than simply copy that list over. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Adam Burns. I'm one of the acute medicine speciality registrars, and I've been a team member in this process. I'd like to talk to you about improvements that we plan to make in the collecting of collateral history. Now, collateral history is often taken from patients, their relatives or carers, and it involves information about how they've come to hospital, what their circumstances are at home, or any concerns that friends or family might have. And currently it's collected by multiple members of the multidisciplinary team, and it's clearly information that's key to that patient's journey through hospital. We wanted to make this a single unified process so that information flowed smoothly without repeating the process by multiple staff members. And so what we've decided to do is we've actually come together and had an agreement that we have a single point of documenting collateral history within the medical documentation that's shown here on the screen. And we've also agreed that it's actually a shared responsibility now, so that actually it's okay for members of nursing, medical or allied health professionals all to contribute to that same piece of information, and that way it avoids multiple handovers or multiple collections of information. I'd also like to talk about our ops rooms. These are where members of the team meet, they kind of collect information about patients and often document in the notes after they've seen a patient. There's lots of information around in these rooms, as you can see on the boards, before we started this process. It was really important that all of that information was useful to the tasks that we had in hand, and so we've used the 5S methodology to kind of sort and simplify the information that was there. One of the easiest steps we did was just to remove items that were out of date. We also designated boards for particular areas of clinical teams. So for example, pharmacy had their own board, so if you know you've got a pharmacy related query, that's where you would go to that board to look. We also, in terms of thinking further down the line, we were thinking about how we kind of sweep this information to keep it current, and also about who has responsibility for upkeep of that information. And so we hope we've empowered ward teams to know that's within their remit, and they have got the power to do that and keep that information up to date in the longer term. And last of all, we talked about at the start how patients aren't always immediately available when they go to be assessed by a clinician. And that might be just that they're not at the bedside, or it might be they're having care tasks like being taken to the toilet or food and drink preparation. And so what we decided was a really simple measure. We could just have a pre-visit by the clinician to let them know that I will be on my way to see you in the next 10 minutes or so. And because we've now got a dedicated assessing doctor, that's possible to do. And that means if there are any care tasks that need to be done, they can be done before you start, and that patient will be at the bedside.
Thank you. I'm Hannah, I'm an acute medicine consultant, and I've been a team member this week. So I'd like to talk a little bit about our future vision of how we assess patients, and we've looked over the week of making small adjustments that we can absolutely go into our wards and make in the next few days and weeks. But we wanted to also address what our future vision for this assessment of our patients is. We want to improve patient experience further, we want to streamline the process and provide effective and fulfilling training for our trainees and for our ACPs to improve that engagement that Bev talked about that we've maybe lost a little bit along the way. So we really want to think about an integrated clinical assessment. So having the nursing staff, the consultant, the trainee or ACP, EDAT and pharmacy all reviewing that patient as soon as they hit the ward, if we can, but very soon after, and making an integrated clinical assessment of that patient. We've come up with a standard work description of how we think that might look, and on the next 3 Wednesday afternoons we're going to just run with that and see if we can actually just do it and see how that goes. We've set up a PDSA cycle so we can review after doing it each Wednesday afternoon and then make adjustments as we go along. And we'll be reporting out in the 30-day report out just to see how that works and see if it is something that we really should be aiming for in the future.
So how did we fare over the week in terms of our target progress report? We simulated through Jen yesterday, who went through a medical clerking process on the acute floor, and actually despite the team thinking that Morag had set them quite a challenging target of 45 minutes, Jen actually went uninterrupted through the medical clerking process in 48 minutes and 20 seconds. And actually the additional time in there was because for the first time this particular example involved patients' relatives in the bed space with the patient. So actually there was much more time spent sharing information and getting information from the relatives, which wasn't replicated in the baseline data. So that is a particularly successful clerking process. In terms of our quality and defects, Jen went to inform the patient up front, as the team had wanted to happen, that this medical clerking process was going to take place, so that that patient was available when this process started. So that for that particular patient we were defect free. The number of times the clinician is interrupted during the medical clerking process, she did have a bit of a posse round her in the form of Adam Cole, the business manager, and myself, but she was uninterrupted in this process. So, and the staff around her were very respectful of that fact. What you actually see in terms of our productivity gain is this is the amount of time that the advanced nurse practitioner, advanced clinical practitioner and a doctor in training is spending. Actually, based on that simulated process, if they can sustain and improve on this, it puts the equivalent back in each of these ward areas of at least one whole time equivalent hours in terms of reducing those interruptions, which is quite an amazing achievement.
So, following this week, we capture all our actions on a newspaper, which you can see here, and excluding the trial that Hannah's talked about that she's going to start next week, a lot of the things we've made good progress on already, and we want to go out there and continue to make that progress and look forward to reporting back in 30 days.
So, key learning. So, sharing information is a respectful behaviour. So, by committing as a team to make necessary information visible, we eliminate waste, as you've heard, like interruptions, duplications, defects. Fundamentally, this helps us keep patients safe and reduces the burden of work for staff. We've heard some descriptions of disconnect, if you like, across teams. So we agreed it's vital that we connect as a multidisciplinary team across professional boundaries if we're going to deliver this safe, quality care for our patients. And the other theme we picked up on was that you might have heard some ideas that have been tried before, and other team members who are perhaps in the audience would identify with this. But as a team, I think we realised that the reason these ideas fail is perhaps because we don't challenge the behaviour behind the idea that we need in order for it to be successful. Thank yous, a huge thank you to Stuart for freeing up the undergraduate hub, and for the team up there who have been really fantastic hosts for our event this week. Can't speak highly enough. If you need a venue, go and knock on the the door. Sorry, Stuart. The team is beyond the people in front of you. There's some in the audience, some who aren't here. So we've got to mention Jess Lovett, who's one of our doctors who joined us, Sam as one of the consultants, Charlie, another consultant, Chris, an expert from pharmacy who gave us his valuable time, and Adam Cole, who, as well as being a bouncer to stop Jen being interrupted, is the business manager and is a co-process owner for this piece of work. The team on 27 and 29, tolerance is the first word that comes to mind, but they're also enthusiastic, and I have no doubt that their support over the next 30 days will lead to some significant improvements on PDSA and moving this work forward. Morag, I've not had to phone her too much this week, but she sponsored this work, listened, supported the planning, and been behind the team, as well as setting them the challenge for the week, which was our platform. And finally, our guest from Virginia Mason over in Seattle, Chika Lambert, is one of our senseis who's been here for the week, as well as sharing her expertise with some of our Lean for Leaders colleagues with the KPO team, has also been very much in part of this workshop, helping me continuously improve and probably Helen a little bit as well. So thanks to her, and that concludes our report out. Brilliant.
Stay there. Fantastic. Thank you ever so much. That's tremendous. And congratulations to all of you, and great effort through the week, and impressive to see the progress that you're making, and looking forward to seeing how we work on that. Can I invite those who have also reported out just to come back to the front? So, Rob, Kath, team. Now it's, having seen 3 really great report outs, it's your opportunity, folks, to kind of pick up any questions. We've just got a few minutes. Well done, Sam.
I couldn't let him hide in the audience.
Just to pick up any questions or comments from any of the 3 that you've heard this lunchtime. Go on.
So I'm Karen Ledgard, Head of Nursing for Outpatients, and actually the project sponsor for this RPIW week. I think the thing for me, it was very much that when we started this, we have a significant problem with nurse staffing in this department, and we met with the constant, the only thing we need is more staff, more staff, more staff. The improvements have been made with no extra staff. We have those staff starting, so the first one started this week, the next one starts over the next few weeks. But I think what's really exciting is that those staff will come into new processes, and right from the beginning will work that new way.
Yeah.
I know when I met with Kath this morning, they're a little disappointed with their progress. And I think, absolutely, why on earth? And I think it is that bit about, okay, you wanted to get way over here, but actually you've made some fantastic improvements with what you have done. So I think as a group, you should be really proud of yourself, but also the team in the department who I've seen firsthand them starting to question each other when they're not doing the things that they should be doing, because they now recognise it. So I can't tell you how proud I am of you as a team.
Fantastic. That's very well said, Karen. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Joe?
It's about the 2-week referral run. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. You can't help listen to that and without bringing to it that leads improvement psychology of what you were doing, and it was just so congruent with that. I'm astonished that faxes still exist. I worked in cancer registry over 10 years ago, and I was staggered then that people were still using that as a pathway. It seemed terribly frail. Hit a wrong digit, that could turn up in a baker's in Rochdale or something like that.
Yeah.
So my question, you selected 11 to go look at. Were they random, or did you say these were problematic 11s, or were best practice and worst practice?
No, I mean they were all over Leeds. I find out emails to quite a few practice managers, and they were the ones that let me go and and interrogate them. Because it does involve a bit of of work on their part as well, because they have to be involved in the whole process. So they were generous enough to give me their time and their resources, people. For the time it took them to do the research.
So the supplementary question being then, could there be some really difficult areas you could have gone and looked at and been appalled at what you were seeing that you didn't get to look at?
It's possible. I mean, I think the process is so variable. I mean, literally 11 practices, 11 different ways of doing it. I'm not really sure I'm convinced that specific areas may be doing it better or worse. I think it's pretty random actually, because and part of the problem with the structure of primary care at the moment is that every practice is an island. You know, so it's very difficult to have a standard actually, because you can't mandate anything. You know, I mean, the CCG and LICS, for example, they can propose this as a standard for the 2-week referral pathway, but we can't mandate anything because the practice could just say, well, I'm sorry, we're happy with our process, you know, and it's been fine for us. So I think until, you know, the structure of primary care changes, which I'm confident it will do actually, but you know, it's going to take a long time. So I think until that structure changes, it's going to be difficult to mandate things. But I think hopefully the message is getting out there, and also the quality improvement message as well. That's now becoming embedded in GP training, because it's very recently become a mandatory part of GP training in the last year. So I think, you know, as that message starts to sort of filter into the general psyche of people that are in primary care, then hopefully this will, you know, make more sense to have standards that are, you know, that we all use to basically for patients most of all, because it improves safety, and that surely nobody can argue with that. You know?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Angie?
I'd just add to that, we are in discussions with primary care about switching off the practice and switching off non-unique versions of getting referrals to us. So as our e-referral interest project rolls out, we have those discussions. So there will come a time, although we can't mandate, what we can say is LTH2 will accept things electronically and take people on that journey as fast as they do.
Yeah, okay. Okay, great. Can I just say an enormous thank you to all of you who've presented out and reported out today. What unites all three has been the focus on patients and on safety, quality, and the kind of way in which collectively all of us can make a contribution to improving our the experience, and within what are, as you pointed out, Karen, really constrained resources. So you're doing all this in a climate of real challenge as far as demand, financial constraints, staffing, and yet still making really impressive progress, which says to me that we've got fantastic teamwork going on and a really strong commitment. I was very impressed to see the kind of level of clinical commitment and engagement in what you've reported out from the week that you've had, Bev, and I have sort of personal pleasure in seeing you do this, because I think you were one of the first wards I came to visit when I started in the trust, and seeing sort of the work that you've taken forward and being honest about how it's felt for you in terms of learning about the Leeds improvement methods. Probably a journey we all have to go on in terms of being comfortable with the tools and using the framework, but I think you've done a cracking job. The challenge, of course, as we know, is sustaining it, and what you said, Kath, about how you keep this up in terms of when you come and do your 90-day and your 30-day, your 90-day, your 100. It's keeping that focus, because that's what will take us forward, is the improvements that you made and ensuring that they're sustainable. So I just wanted to close by saying a huge thank you to you all. Keep it going, and for everyone that's here today seeing this, I hope you take some inspiration and encouragement for continuing the work that we're doing with the Leeds Improvement Method, because it is genuinely making a difference for our patients and for all of our staff in terms of improving what we do here and making a huge difference. So thank you very much.
Can we just do a certificate shot? Do you have to rush off?
Yes.
No,
I'm fine.
Have we got
Is it visual?
Yeah, visual.
Well done. Great. Excellent. Well done, Bev. Really good. Really good. Well done. Well done. Thank you. Sam.
Stop wondering, no?
Well done, thank you, Chief.
Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, no way. I want to have a shave.
Yeah.
Get to take the top part.
No, it does,
Come on, Mum. How wide is it? How wide is it?
Wide enough. Are you sure you're squeezing a little bit?
Stand sideways.
We're sideways, eh? Perfect, thank you. Passport photo.
Great job, Steve.
Successive check. Self-check.
So this is how you answer email
That's not intentionally, we're all a bit brainwashed. James suggesting if you want to come, I'm just going to check out with the other two individuals. If you want to come and listen to the debrief about the week, so that you can get a sort of frame of reference for what we've done. I'll just go and check with the individuals. See what we're going to do it. Yes. Are you here all afternoon or? So it's more likely to be in the short interval. When we've just wrapped up with practice, I kind of close out the week with the people who are going to be responsible for delivering the work afterwards. Then we've got to go back to our normal internal Cards and Promotion Office team meeting.
When's next week then, Jimmy?
That's brilliant, yeah. Do you guys have a team meeting on Friday afternoon? We haven't actually, no. Yeah, so, well, I have, so I've shown her the wall and it's sort of red kit, but I've not talked about my personal experience. Yeah, so I've done...
September.
Well, I can't. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Sophie, right at the start, joined our team as a business apprentice. about 18 months ago, and
I think with momentum is just completely on. It seems like already support education,
but also now
various conditions is
that's getting involved in supporting the RPIW. Involved in the improvement work.
In terms of showing some of the best stuff, a bit more formally around.
Well, yes and no. So you do it to learn skills about your personal learning, but during that experience you have a project that you can choose to focus on, which you then apply the tools and techniques to, and then after that the idea is that you're then resourced within the organisation. So I'm focusing on our executive team, trying to
Yeah, that's not bad. Sorry, no lunch today. You'll have to go and get something better than M&S.
Yeah, it's a shut down module. To reach a day long, and then starting February, just on the 3rd last week, last Friday. Yeah, I guess I think that's right, that tension is there. I think that